Hello, welcome to Management TV. Today we are with Chris Anderson, Editor-in-Chief of Wired magazine. Thank you, Chris, and welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
You wrote a bestseller, a New York bestseller, that's called The Long Tail. Why the title, and what's the book about?
You would think I'd be able to have a kind of a two-sentence version of this by now. The long tail refers to the sort of the shape of demand, say sales curve or something like that. And basically it goes like a ski slope. You start up with the bestsellers and the blockbusters, and then usually in most markets you just sort of stop. If the things don't sell well, they're not available at all. The shelf space runs out, the channels run out, stations run out. Distribution tends to only favor the bestsellers. The long tail is everything else. All those niche products, those products of minority taste that don't typically make it through traditional distribution in stores and on television screens, but are now starting to be find markets on the internet and in more discriminating markets where consumers are becoming affluent and educated about their taste.
What happened that things that did not sell a while ago now are sellable?
Well, a couple things. I mean, first is that we now are able to tap sort of global markets. So let's say you're offering some sort of organic artisanal chocolate. Well, there may be no one town which has sufficient demand for an organic artisanal chocolate, but if you're able to tap a global market, either through the internet or through specialty distribution, mail order, things like that, you're able to find this kind of distributed demand. The second thing, so obviously the internet has been the best sort of global marketplace to find distributed demand. The second thing is, as we become more affluent, more educated, more discriminating in our taste, we start to move out of the one-size-fits-all and towards things that are just right for us. Now, we've obviously, for centuries, we've seen this with things like wine. But now we're starting to see it with, water. I mean, think that, water is now a specialty product. Coffee is a specialty product. Foods of all sorts are becoming specialty products. I mean, if you go into a supermarket right now, there could be 20 or 30 different kinds of flour alone as you go to various different kinds of, rice and organic and fair trade and the various country of origin. And that sort of Starbucks coffee phenomenon of people becoming extremely specific in their needs is pervasive across the economy and culture right now.
Do you have to be a Starbucks, therefore? Do you have to be a giant to serve that demand of the long tail?
Not at all, and that is really the lesson of the internet. I mean, Starbucks sort of says, well, we're going to have a kind of a global footprint in stores and a lot of choice within the store. Easy to do when you're mixing water and beans, hard to do when you're selling physical goods. The only way you can offer infinite variety and ultimate reach is using a virtual marketplace like the internet. And the great thing about the internet is that it doesn't discriminate between large and small. If you're a tiny retailer selling, a very niche product, think of some sort of design, some fashion product, T-shirts or something like that that's extremely specialized, you can reach a global marketplace no matter how large you are. And with virtual warehousing and just-in-time supply, etc., the little guys have access to the same global supply chains that the big guys used to exclusively own.
How do you apply that? I'm a furniture owner, furniture company owner, Mr. Brown, and I would like to take advantage of that tool.
Yeah.
How would that be?
Well, the three things that have changed are your access to global manufacturing, your access to global distribution, your access to global marketing. So all those have become democratized. Everyone has the same access. Now, for furniture, maybe manufacturing doesn't change.
Okay.
Maybe that is what it is. However, you now have new forms of distribution.
Okay.
There's the traditional stores and retailers and warehouses, and then there's these new forms of non-traditional distribution. It could be, imagine, the sort of the web storefronts. And then finally, there's marketing. And marketing is really the most kind of profound aspect of the new long-tail marketplaces, which is that you're able to use non-traditional marketing, not so much advertising and billboards and things like that, but word of mouth. There are communities out there who want who want almost any product you can imagine. And these communities will become evangelists for products on their own. And that word of mouth, that sort of hearing about a product from another consumer is in many ways more powerful than advertising. And the internet is the world's greatest word of mouth amplifier.
Do you have an example of a product that's been communicated through word of mouth through the internet?
Well, I think you know, in my day job, I work for a big magazine publisher where most of our titles are fashion magazines. So it's been very interesting to watch the fashion industry, which has always been a long tail industry, right? So that you have sort of you have mass retail, and then you have boutique and couture. Boutique and couture is the long tail. So small volumes, high influence, often high price and high margin as well.
Okay.
What's interesting about the internet is that you have a new form of the long tail fashion, which is the grassroots, the street fashion, where people are making their own clothes. Sometimes you see it in things like vintage clothing, where people are sort of discovering older clothes and then making them cool again. Sometimes it's creating their own clothing in this kind of the marketplaces where you can design your clothes, and then you have the sort of modifying, you know, clothing, mashing up in your own way. When I was a kid, you wanted to wear what everyone else wore. Today, you want to wear what no one else wears. It's all about distinctiveness, individuality, about staying as far from the mainstream as possible. And these sort of marketplaces of dozens rather than millions are what's enabled online, but also in any store that's able to tap this online buzz.
Interesting. Is the search engine marketing. How would you use that? What tips do you have to make it more effective?
Well, search engine marketing, and Google being the best example of this, is optimized for the narrow. Traditional advertising is optimized for the mass, 30-second spots on television, billboards, mass market publication. Google is all about highly relevant advertising. What determines highly relevant is being able to match a very narrow product with a very narrow community. So, to give you an example, one of my side jobs is I have a robotics company.
Really?
Yeah, and we do aerial robotics and unmanned aerial vehicles for amateurs. Sounds very narrow. We have a community site, and we talk about the technologies of amateur unmanned aerial vehicles, and we run Google ads next to them. These Google ads are incredibly narrow. They're not for robots. They're for 3-axis accelerometers with a very certain kind of voltage. And they're so relevant and so targeted that our members actually have asked them to be kept on. I asked them, do you want the advertisements or not? And they said they're so useful that they act like content. Google, by being a self-serve DIY marketplace, is able to scale advertising from the mass down to the micro. And down there at the micro, the engagement is so much more intense. We're actually getting higher CPMs, higher sort of pay for those ads on narrow sites than we are on Wired.com, where we're doing traditional brand advertising.
So if you were Mr. Brown with a furniture business, you would start investing. Obviously, there's a learning process. What are the keywords that you have to invest on, or what are the websites, or just Google or others, but put money into the search engine.
If you have a truly unique product, you don't need to necessarily identify the unique community. The search engine will do that for you. What you do is you just do experiments. You just sort of can describe your product in words, because typically these are text ads. You describe the product in more and more specific ways on the hope that the information, the uniqueness that in your description will match it automatically to the communities and content that are most likely to lead to a sale.
You're describing how society is working with the internet, both on communication and product development and community development. Let's step backwards, and I'll ask you, how would you define innovation? What's innovation for you?
To me, innovation is identifying new needs. Basically, I mean, there's loads of ideas out there, but the ideas that matter are the ones that resonate with the consumer. So I mean, there's only one way to find out whether an idea is a good one, and that's to be able to bounce it off the consumer. And I think what's new about innovation, I think what really makes it a kind of a more crisp process, is this ability to rapidly prototype, to sort of do things in public with very quick reaction. Almost you do it hand in hand with your users, whether it's open source or just inviting your most engaged consumers into the process to help you do it. This rapid experimentation process is is basically creating products that have a much higher certainty of success in the marketplace because they've been beta tested. You know, in software, we've always done this. We've always beta tested software with, the alpha users. You can now beta test everything. You can beta test hardware. You can beta test ideas. You can beta test books, as I do with my books. I do them in public and rapidly experiment with ideas and data and constructions and get feedback and then create a better product. What this does is it gets you better products, gets you faster products, and gets you a higher likelihood of success in the marketplace because they've already been tested. So this, you know, we've always had focus groups, we've always had testing. What the internet represents to me today is the world's biggest, most efficient testing, you know, playground, sandbox, if you will. So that innovation is increasingly something that you can do in public, in collaboration with potential users.
It's very clear. Can you mention a company that has done that process very successfully and one that has failed because of doing so?
Well, I mean, I mentioned my interest in, I'll use personal examples if you don't mind. I mentioned my interest in robotics. You know, one of the companies that's been sort of a pioneer in consumer robotics is Lego, interestingly. Yes. I'm one of their sort of, you know, alpha users, if you will. And we come up with ideas, we develop prototypes, and then the Lego company blesses them. They either decide that, yes, this is useful, and then there's a process by which it gets turned into a formal product, or they'll say, okay, this would be a good third-party product, and we're going to encourage that, or they'll just say, you know,
enjoy it.
Enjoy it. And you know, what they pay us with no money whatsoever. They pay us with information, they pay us with respect. They listen to us. Occasionally, they'll give us Christmas presents, but you know, a Star Wars kit or something like that for our kids, but nothing special. But most importantly, they engage with us, and just the pleasure of knowing that your ideas might someday turn into a product that millions of children might use is reward enough. And I think as a result, Lego gets better products, faster products, and a better certainty of success because they've got us amateurs as part of their development process.
That's a good example of something that works. Do you have an example of a company that has failed of achieving success through
who tried that? Who tried that and failed? Well, you know, failure is an absolutely essential part of experimentation. I mean, our motto at Wired, where we do this all the time, is fail fast. You know, we'd like to succeed fast, but success is unpredictable. We certainly don't want to fail slowly and expensively. So, I mean, I think if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. What would be a true failure is to do one experiment and then give up. So what I look for is the willingness to take chances, the willingness to sort of embrace messiness, to have lots of small failures, and out of that, presumably, a few big successes.
You have the 98% rule. Traditionally, we used the Pareto rule that says that 80% of the products make 20% of the benefits or the sales, and that only 20% of the products make for the big money.
Exactly.
What's the 98% rule compared to that?
Well, the 98% rule is actually something that came out of our early research with entertainment products as they became digital. The general sense about any product line is that 80% doesn't sell and 20% does sell, and so you sort of brutally cut off the 80% that doesn't sell and just take them off the shelf and then leave the 20% that does sell. What's interesting is that as we switched to digital products and we went to music and videos and books of various sorts, the iTunes models, we didn't have to cut things off anymore. Basically, everything was available, and we could then measure what the actual demand was. And the 98% rule was the observation that 98% of everything sells. 98% of everything in these marketplaces has some demand. Now, doesn't necessarily sell a lot, but the marginal cost of a digital file is zero. So it doesn't matter. One sale is potentially profitable. So what you're realizing is that by focusing on the top 20%, we were blind to the long tail of minority taste, the long tail of smaller products that were selling in lower numbers, but because there's so many of them, they could add up to a marketplace as big as the blockbusters we knew.
So one of the keys to make it profitable would be to keep the marginal cost of that 98% low.
And if any digital file, the marginal cost is zero.
Your next book is free. What's the main idea behind it?
it evolved interestingly from the long tail. So what enabled this explosion of variety and the realization that there were a lot of niche markets out there that were underserved was the availability of infinite shelf space. So the Amazons of the world are essentially infinite shelf space. Well, the only way you can have infinite shelf space is if the shelf space is free. Traditional stores, shelf space has a rent. It's expensive. If you don't pay your rent, you get booted off the shelf.
Yeah.
And virtual marketplaces, it's zero. There is no rent to the shelf space in Amazon. So the creation of free shelf space led to more shelf space, which led to the realization that there was this big market of niches. So it made me sort of put free on my radar screen. I started looking around and I realized that the internet is basically an entire economy based on free. Most products are free on the internet. Everything Google does is free. Almost everything Yahoo does is free. Once a product becomes a digital product on a website, it tends to become free. The newspapers have now switched from pay models to free models. We've never before seen an economy based on free before. It's the first economy in the world this size where the presumption is that everything's going to be free to consumers. Obviously, this is enabled by the fact that it's digital. It's the first economy in the world where the underlying costs are falling every year. Moore's law. Moore's law says the power of a chip will double every 18 months. Well, the corollary is that the cost of that chip for the same power will halve every 18 months, and so too for storage and bandwidth. There's never been an economy where the feedstocks, it was if like in a car, that steel got half as expensive every year, and labor got half as expensive every year, and plastic got half. It's never before been true, but it is true for digital products. So now we have an economy where all the cost lines are going down to zero, and as a result, in any economic market, they'll tell you that price falls to the marginal cost. So all the prices are falling to zero. So where do you make money? And the answer is
that's a big question.
Well, obviously people do. Now, I come from the media business. In the media business, and as presumably here as well, radio is free to air, television is free to air. Most media is either free on the web or subsidized to such an extent it might as well be free in print. How do we make money? Advertising. Third party pays. A third party pays for the consumer to get the product for free. So obviously the notion of a free economy is not unique. The media business has been doing it forever. Now, what happens is on the web is that everything that becomes digital has the capacity to become a media business model. So software, for example. Software used to be something you would buy in a box, $29.99. It goes onto the web. Now maybe it's advertising supported, just like media. So as more products become digital products, they can adopt the media model and become advertising supported. But that's just one of the two models. The other is what's called freemium. And freemium is kind of an inversion of the old free sample model. The old free sample is like with muffins. You want to sell muffins, you take like 1% of your muffins and you give them away as free samples to sell the other 99%. In digital, it's the opposite. You give away 99% of your product to sell 1%. How can you do that? It's because muffins, the marginal cost is not zero. Every muffin has a certain cost. With digital products, the marginal cost is zero. So let's say, for example, it's webmail or something like that, which is typically free. You can let 99% of the users get free webmail because it costs so little to serve them. And the 1% who really want more storage or better spam filtering, who really care about their email,
pay for the 100.
They'll subsidize they'll subsidize the rest. They'll pay for everybody else.
Still, you're talking about information-based or digital products.
Digital. But as more and more products become digital products, services. There was once a time when a travel agent was a person, et cetera. As more and more products become digital products, they can adopt these models. But it can apply outside the internet as well.
You can say, for example, in a furniture business, the furniture business, I was thinking, should I sell my furniture with logos on the furniture? Maybe not really, but a part of the furniture value added, the sales process, could be done through the internet, and therefore a lower cost.
But let's get to free. Let's get all the way to free. So razors and blades, right? Razors and blades, the classic model, you give away the razor and you sell the blades. And we now see this all over the place, cell phones in America, that you give away the cell phone, you sell the minutes, etc. Well, as more of these products can kind of go to the web for lower customer service, you have more flexibility of what you charge for. It's been very interesting to see what's going on with the low-cost carriers in Europe, the airlines. Ryanair, the president of Ryanair has promised that airfare will become free, that the seat will become free. Now, how can that be? Well, because they're not in the seat business anymore. They're in the broad travel business, so they're making the money from the obvious things like the rental car and the hotel reservations and advertising both on the web and on the seat back. Then they charge you a lot for your sandwich and for your water. Then, of course, they are selling the cargo space to cargo companies. So if you want to put your baggage in the airplane, you're going to have to pay a lot for that. They get a subsidy from the destinations they're going to because they're out of the way places who want the tourism, so they're willing to pay for that. And that gets you to about 10 euros for from like a flight from London to Lisbon, for example. How do you get to zero? Gambling. If you turn the airplane into a kind of a flying casino,
wow,
then they'll give you the flight for free. And you can just go industry to industry, and you can think of ways. I mean, whatever business you're in, sooner or later, someone's going to find a way to do what you do for free. You're going to compete with free. So what are you going to do? Well, there's lots of ways to compete with free. You can have a superior product.
Yes.
You can't have a cheaper product. Microsoft has been competing with free for a long time. Microsoft has Office, and it has its operating systems, et cetera, now, and is competing with open source, Linux and Apache and Firefox, et cetera. So what Microsoft says is, okay, well, our product may not necessarily be better than Linux in all regards, but for enterprise customers, it is more secure, or it has more support, or it is designed to work with the enterprise applications you already have. So what they've done is they've said, look, it's not necessarily going to be that we're going to be the right option for everybody, but we're going to identify the community, that sort of 1%, to use the freemium example, the community that wants more than free. Price is not the determining factor for them. Something like security, ease of use, reliability, confidence is the determining factor. And for them, who are essentially price insensitive, we're going to charge them. We're going to charge them a lot. So your question is really that. If you're competing with free, who is the most engaged, most demanding user, and how do you offer a premium service for them and justify your price that way? To give you one last example, a friend of mine is starting a car company in Israel, electric car company. It's called Better Place, and the cars are going to be free. They'll give you the car, and what they're selling you is the electricity. It's just like the cell phone model. So now car companies are going to. So now you're going to say, well, okay, I want to buy a car. I can either get this car for free and have a lower lifetime value because the price of gas is going up and the price of electricity is not going up as fast. So I can either pay sort of monthly based on what I use in terms of the electricity usage, or I can write a big check for a regular car, and then I'm vulnerable to whatever the gas prices are going to be. And so I think it's going to be a very tough competition for traditional car companies as more and more new car companies can embrace non-traditional pricing models. Now, I'm sure there is an answer. I'm sure that a traditional car company will say, well, you can lease it. That's kind of like free. You're not paying something up front. Maybe we'll scale the lease terms to the price of gas so that we can match the operational costs of an electric car. But they're going to have to change the model because people are going to be able to introduce the psychologically powerful word free into the marketplace, and they're going to have to compete with free whether they like it or not.
Amazing. More psychology than business, actually, yeah?
Absolutely. I mean, often in many cases, like razors and blades, you're still paying as much money. It's coming out of this pocket or it's coming out of that pocket. But one model gets to use this psychologically powerful word free and the other does not.
Great. Thank you very much for this free interview, and hope to see you soon in Management TV.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. It's really great.